Today I'll be showing you how to sew the Leo vest from start to finish. The PDF sewing pattern is available on my website with the link in the description below. First, start by laying out your pattern pieces, then cut around each pattern piece and transfer any notches or dots. Stay stitch any curved or bias edges to help prevent the fabric from stretching. Use a short stitch length and sew within the seam allowance. Apply interfacing to the center front facing and the neck facing panels, as well as each panel at the hem. Place the side front panels onto the center front panels and pin those together, matching the notches. When you sew this seam, you will have to ease around the curves between the notches. After you've stitched the front princess seam, you want to then go ahead and clip and notch around the curve, just around the bust, and then press the seams open. When you press the seam around the bust area, use a pressing ham or even a rolled towel underneath just to support the curve you just created. You just want to prevent it from being pressed flat. Okay, so next we're going to work on the center back seam. With right sides together, pin the center back seam and stitch. You'll then want to press the center back seam open. The next step is to sew the back princess seams. So you want to place the side back panels on the center back panel. Pin and stitch just as you did with the front princess seam. Notch and clip these seam allowances and press them open, just as you did with the front of the vest. Now it's time to attach the front of the vest to the back of the vest, and we're going to do that by sewing the shoulder seams. So with right sides together, pin the shoulder seams matching the notches. Press the seams open. Now we're going to head on to the lining. Create the little pleat on the side front lining that's marked on the pattern. Once the pleat is created, pin and stitch the side front lining to the center front facing, matching the notches. Clip these seam allowances and press them open. Now we're going to move on to the back of the lining. So get your center back lining pieces and with right sides together, pin and stitch. Create a small tacking stitch at the top of the center back panels. This is going to help create the back pleat. With the right side of the center back facing up, you're going to want to press the seam allowance and the pleat to the left. I find the neck facing to be one of the trickiest steps in the vest, so just take your time with this. I find it useful just to pin the ends and the center of the neck facing to the vest and then halving all the spaces between each of the pins with more pins until it's sitting smoothly. You're going to want to clip and notch generously around this neck facing just so it sits nice and flat when you're pressing it. Now it's time to press that seam. Make sure that you're pressing all of the seam allowances towards the vest. So matching the notches, you want to pin the side back lining pieces to the center back lining pieces and stitch that together. Now you want to clip and notch those seam allowances and press them open. Now we're going to attach the front and the back lining pieces at the shoulders. So make sure that the neck facing and the center front facing seams are lining up, and then pin and stitch. And now just press those open. Now it's time to attach the lining and the main fabric. Place the lining and the main fabric right sides together. Then stitch from one center front around the neckline and then down the other center front. Trim around the corners of these seam allowances and be sure to clip around the neckline curves as well. Once you've done that, we're going to press the seam allowances towards the lining, and then we're going to understitch. After understitching, you want to press the center fronts and the neckline nice and flat. So with right sides together, you just want to match all of the seams and pin the armhole lining to the armhole of the main fabric and stitch that together. Once stitched together, trim the seam allowance. Now we're going to pull the vest right side out. So you're going to want to put your arm up through the back of the vest, through the armhole, and pull the front of the vest through to turn it right side out. Now's the time to make sure everything's pressed nice and neatly around the top near the neckline and the armholes, just making sure that the lining is tucked away nicely inside the vest. If you're sewing view B, this is where we're going to make the waist ties and attach them to the vest. With right sides together, fold the ties lengthwise and stitch at one end and then all the way down the length of the tie. Trim the seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to turn the waist ties right side out. Once you've turned the waist ties, you just want to press them nice and flat. Pin the waist ties to the side back panels between the dots that you transferred from the pattern, and stitch back and forth 2 or 3 times. This next step is a little fiddly. We're going to sew the side seams together in one continuous seam, working through the lining first, sewing over the underarm seam, and then moving onto the main fabric side seams. We'll turn the vest right side out and press those seams. You can press them open or towards the back, whichever you prefer. Our next step is to press the main fabric hem up. Measure 5.5 centimeters from the bottom of the fabric, including the center front facing hem, and press that up. Now we're going to turn the vest so that the right sides are together at the hem, and matching up all of the seam lines from the lining to the main fabric. You want to pin that all the way across and stitch. You're just going to leave a gap between the dots that you marked off the pattern. That's just to help us turn it back the right way when we're finished. Now we're going to turn the vest right side out using the gap that we left in the hem. Now that the vest has been turned right side out, you just want to take some time to press everything nice and flat. Make sure you get the corners really well. Where you pressed the main fabric hem earlier, you want to use that as a guide and just take some time to press all of the edges neatly into place and all the lining neatly inside the vest. So as you're pressing the lining will have a roll or a fold at the bottom. Hand stitch the gap closed using whatever method is easier for you. I'm just using a slip stitch here. At the hem, secure the lining with small tacks at the princess seams and the side seams just to prevent it from rolling out. This is optional, but you could also hand stitch the corners of the bottom of the vest, just where the center front facing and the lining meet. I just did a slip stitch for each corner. So transfer the buttonhole markings from the pattern onto your vest and then sew the buttonholes. Now finally sew the buttons in place, just making sure you align them with the buttonholes. Thank you so much for sewing along with me. I hope you enjoyed making your Leo vest. If you share it on Instagram, I'd love to see it, so be sure to tag me at Ashley Seros Patterns.